Good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of our com151 Introduction to Microsoft Office class. This is Mark, your instructor, and I'd like to welcome you to the week. This week we're going to continue our discussions on the Microsoft Excel, and this week specifically we're going to get into charts and the different types of charts and how to use them and so forth. So I hope that you're learning some things about Excel and that you've enjoyed this process so far. We only have a few more weeks to go and we will part ways and you'll be off to your next classes. This week, as we talk about charts, there really are a lot of charts that you can do in Microsoft Excel. Three of the most common charts would be a pie chart, a line chart, or a bar chart. But then there are also charts like radar charts, plot charts. There are X bar and R charts and so forth, depending on what you're doing. So there are usually those big three: the pie chart, line chart, bar chart, that most people will use. But if you're doing statistics or you're doing some other kind of things, Excel has a lot of different options for you in terms of creating charts. The key to it, I think, for charting that you need to understand, especially if someone's just learning or hasn't got a lot of experience with charts, you really do have to use the right chart at the right time. If you remember, the whole point of having a chart is to visually represent numbers or data so that our audience can understand what we're trying to show, or even help us to interpret the data, because sometimes if you have a lot of numbers, a lot of data, pages of information, changes or things that you might want to pick up on may be very difficult to see. But when you put it into a visual representation like a chart, things stand out and you're like, oh, okay, I see that. So we want to make sure we use the right chart for the right time. Pie charts, a lot of people like pie charts simply because they're easy. There can be 2D or 3D. I personally like the 3D chart. And pie charts are really used mainly when you want to show parts of a whole. It's called a pie chart because it looks like a pie. The pie represents 100% of a population. It may be 100% of the people, 100% of the states, 100% of the nations, 100% of whatever. And then the slices of pie represent the percentages, if you will, or even the numbers of how that pie can be broken into slices. So for an example, 100% of the American population might be represented by a whole circle or pie. And then you would break it out by Democrat, Republican. You might break it out by independent or some other political party. You'd see the different slices. You could break out in a population of male and female or those sorts of things. So when you're thinking about showing parts of a whole, that's when you really want to use a pie chart. And we're going to talk a little bit in our next Zoom conference about how to create charts, but keep that in mind. Line charts, another easy process to really make, are really good when you're trying to show changes over time. For an example, I may have January through December as a guide, and then I may show average temperature, for an example, or I may show my gross pay each month, or what have you. But when you have data that you're trying to show how something has changed over time, a line chart is a good chart to use. Bar charts can be either horizontal or vertical. I prefer vertical, but that's just personal preference. Sometimes it depends on the layout of your page, which one really is the best. But a bar chart, and some folks will call them Paretos, show which items in a population are worse than others, if you will, or the biggest contributor or the least contributor. For an example, I may say, let's say I go to Chick-fil-A and I want to analyze sales. Well, on any given day, how many chicken sandwiches do I sell? How many nuggets do I sell? How many wraps do I sell? How many bowls of soup do I sell, etc. Would be a good way to do that. So I know the total sales at the end of the day, but a bar chart, or a Pareto, if you will, would list them in order of most to least, or least to most, and show you which ones are the biggest contributors. We see this a lot when we're looking at quality numbers in factories. What's the biggest defect? What's the biggest quality problem? You can go out consumer reports and stuff and see maybe you're buying a car. What is the number one complaint about a Toyota? So that's what a Pareto or usually just called bar charts are used for, is to show the individual pieces. And what would I do with that? Obviously, I would put, if I see this is the biggest contributor in a negative way, that's the first place that you want to go work, because you get the most bang for your buck if you can kind of improve that particular bar. So each of these three charts will show you information in a different way. You may also, if you're doing statistics, see an X bar and R chart, which will show you variation. How much does something change? You might see that in something like in quality functions, obviously, but you may see that in things like temperature. Over the month of October, I would use an X bar and R chart, which looks like a line chart, but it shows variation. How much does the temperature fluctuate during a typical October where you live? An X bar and R chart would show you those sort of things. So that's just kind of a teaser, if you will, about charts and what kinds of charts are out there, the most commonly used, what would they be used for, that kind of thing. So hope that you're going to enjoy playing around with the charts this week and learning how to create them and make them show what you want to show. The second thing about charts that I really want to make sure that I hit on is it's important that when we are making charts, or even looking at charts in newspapers, magazines, and stuff, that we pay attention to the scaling that goes across the bottom, the scaling that goes up the left-hand side. It's quite easy to change the scaling on different charts. And what we will see, if you're not careful, the computer will automatically set up scales and that kind of thing, but you can go in and make it more appropriate. It's going to take its best guess. The problem with scales is that as I change a scale, and I'm going to show you this in the Zoom conference, I can make the information look better, or I can make the information look worse by simply changing the scale, because it makes the picture, if you will, change drastically. So when we're looking at charts or working with charts, we want to make sure that we use a good scale, an accurate scale. But when we're looking at it from other people, where they're trying to show us something, we want to always look at the scale and make sure that the information is accurate, because a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a chart is really, really helpful. But if I make the chart look worse than it really is, there's the potential for someone to make a bad decision on false data. So we'll be talking more about that this week. Okay. On Tuesday night, we will have our 4th Zoom conference call that will be recorded as usual. If you can't be there, it will be recorded and sent out so that you can watch it and then send me the email to let me know that it's there. Again, I hope that you can come. If not, watch the video. That's an easy 100 in your assignments category. As I've mentioned in some of my emails, we've got to do a proctored exam in Zoom here sometime soon. I think I said week 8 we would get it done. It will simply be about 10 true-false questions that you'll have to do. But I'll get the date and time out specifically here pretty quick. And you'll have to log on to Zoom and log on to your course and take the exam while you're in the Zoom conference, showing me your picture ID, which would be a driver's license, a passport, something that proves that you are you. The school is requiring us to do that, and we will get that knocked out and done. If you can't attend that, we'll look at setting up either a second session or seeing how the school wants to handle it in terms of of grades. So I'm not sure if this is something that is real serious in terms of grades, if they're experimenting with it in terms of student engagement or what, but we'll knock it out, we'll get it done. Don't get too frustrated over it. I'll give you the details later. So with that said, I hope that you're enjoying the class. Reach out to me, email, text, or whatever if you've got questions. As usual, I'm here to try to help you the best I can. So I hope you have a great week.